Good afternoon. Why don't you get the door, please? Thank you all for coming this afternoon. I, as always, want to be very respectful of your time, so I'll try to be as efficient as I can and ask you as well. You're perhaps the only thing standing between you and the afternoon. So I'll start with the language. Members of the committee are hereby advised of their duty under the State Government Ethics Act to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflict, and are instructed to refrain from participating in any matter coming before this committee with respect to which there is a conflict of interest or appearance of conflict. If you have one, you know it now at the appropriate time, but please note it. We'll proceed with the agenda for now, take things out of order if and as needed. First is the approval of the minutes. They will be in your materials, and so at this time I would entertain the motion for approval of the minutes. Second. We can second any comments or corrections to the minutes. Well, it's on the council minutes, just going down. So we're talking about the council minutes. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you, that carries. And now, correct. Now we're talking about the executive committee minutes from the April 18th.
Motion to approve.
April 18th minute motion to approve, yes. So moved. Second. Any corrections to those minutes, comments? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We should now have presentations on the finance and audit committee meeting. I will start with Chair Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. The second quarter financial statements are in your materials. With the agenda for the Finance and Audit Committee, I'm happy to entertain any questions. Seeing none, that is the motion to make those financial statements recommendation count. Motion for the committee, all parts of second, President.
That is correct. Any comments? Any comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Next is the selection of the independent auditor, auditor for 2024. The recommendation of Finance and Audit is Randy Cawthorn of Bernard Robinson Accounting Firm as the accountant in charge, and the authorization of the executive director to execute the engagement letter with Bernard Robinson. That's the recommendation of Finance and Audit.
Any questions, comments about that? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries.
Next item is, and we can get into the weeds on this if we need to, but the large courtroom at the State Bar Building, the AV technology and the IT stuff is about 10 years old. We are looking into getting 3 quotes. We only have 1 right now, and also seeking some financial assistance from the Bar Foundation to help with that renovation. We believe that will be a significant cost, but we would ask, the Finance and Audit Committee would ask that this executive committee and then council tomorrow authorize the officers to enter into, and during third quarter, to approve the execution of a contract for that installation. If we have any questions, I'm gonna probably turn it over to Peter for more detail, but I think the one quote we have, y'all, was in the neighborhood of $250, and I'm not talking dollars. But it sounds like it needs to be done, especially, we'll get to it later, especially with these new grievance rules that are coming down the pipe from the legislature. We're gonna need to have the ability to increase our technology. So are there any questions on that issue? That is a motion of the finance.
Do you have anything you want to add here? No. Alice? Any questions? All right.
Is it a blanket approval or not to exceed number for approval?
The recommendation is that this body, gives the authority to execute the contract. We believe that the dollar figure is going to be in the area of 250 or so. And so we're asking, so we don't come back to give the officers and this body, authority to that contract as the authority in the best interest of the state law.
We need to get the other quotes and we need to know how much
The
bar
quote that-
donation.
Yeah, the quote that we have is from the computer, give you detail on this, that we feel really good about. But I didn't want to just go with that. I wanted to find out what else might be out there. So what we'd probably be looking for is, you know, and some indication it's better technology where they can do as good for less. But so I'm thinking it's going to be in that neighborhood of about $250,000. And if we're going to substantially exceed that, then we would probably recommend that we get full authority for that addition.
And it won't be a $250,000 additional hit to our budget because there were already funds squared away for this project, you know, a much smaller amount of funds, and there are going to be funds that we see from the Bar Foundation. So we're not anticipating this becoming an extra $250,000 that is not budgeted for here, but it will exceed what was originally budgeted.
Any further questions on that? That's the recommendation of Finance and Audit, Mr. President.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Now we will turn to the recommendations of the Appointments Advisory Committee. Matt?
Thank you. For the Disciplinary Hearing Commission, we have one appointment to the completion of the retiring term of Margaret Hunt, which ends on June 30, 2025. It is the recommendation, Appointments Advisory to this body to recommend the council the appointment of Joshua Willie to that position.
And just for clarification, he will be completing the term that Margaret Hunt has resigned from, and will be eligible to additional terms after that. That is the recommendation of this body. Correct. Questions? All in favor? Opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Next is the Board of Legal Specialization, 4 appointments, each for 3-year terms. Committee recommends the following appointments: Barbara Morgenstern to a second 3-year term, Daniel Pope to a 3-year term, Cynthia Azia to a 3-year term, Damon Seals to a 3-year term, Matthew Ladenheim to a 1-year term as chair, and John Bircher to a 1-year term as vice chair. As a recommendation.
Sorry, that's incorrect. It's supposed to be Barbara Morgenstern as vice chair.
Pardon.
Okay, that's fine.
That is the recommendation from the board.
As amended. As amended.
You have heard the recommendation of Performance Advisory with respect to the Board of Legal Specialization. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you, that passes.
Next is the Alta Board of Trustees, 3 appointments for each for 3-year terms. Ted Edwards to a second 3-year term, Shakira Richardson Shropshire to a second 3-year term, Jacob Kyle Smith to a second-year term, Shelby Benton to a 1-year term as chair, and Heather Culp to a 1-year term as vice chair. That's the motion of the committee.
That is correct, Mr. Bowden. That is correct.
That sounds correct.
That is the recommendation of the Performance Advisory with respect to IOTA board. Questions, comments? All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you.
The next item, Mr. President, you've already made this appointment, but it's more informational. That Joe Kalo was reappointed to General Statutes Commission. and Laura Quinn was appointed to, Dispute Resolution Commission. Those are fall squarely within the sound judgment of President Brown.
All right, that's your information, so thank you very much, for allowing me to do that. We shall now move to section 4 of the agenda, relative to the proposed rules and amendments and procedures, et cetera, to implement the legislative requirements from the law that was passed recently. This can get a bit complicated, probably above my pay grade, so I have to ask our fearless leader, Alice, to lead us through the next section about the rules and how we're going to implement those, and follow along with your agenda, please, as we discussed them. So Alice, I'll just ask you to go down in the section, if you will.
And then I'll defer to you to do.
Yes, yes.
Well, in putting together the agenda, I had to kind of think through how to present this to you, Peter. Do you need me on mic?
She's gonna be able to just do that.
We had to kind of think through how to present this to you because the legislation had some different timeframes for effectiveness and gave us some different authority relative to how we had to go about doing things. So to make all that work, it was necessary to kind of think through it step by step by step. The very first step is that we have rule amendments that are for publication for comment. This is our normal rule amendment process that we need to initiate so that we can end up with final rules to be utilized to implement the legislative mandate. Those rules are all grievance rules. They're rule 0.0111, rule 0.0112, rule 0.0113, and two new rules, 0.0136. That's the one that will implement the expunction requirements in the legislation. And new rule 0.0137, which is on vexatious complainants. And again, there's a new statute that allows us to identify somebody as a vexatious complainant and kind of cut them off. I am just going to go through procedurally what you need to do. If you have questions about the substance of any of the rule amendments, Carmen is here and she can answer those questions, and Catherine Jean as well worked extensively on these rule amendments. The one thing I would point out is that rule 0112 includes not only changes that are necessary to implement the legislation, but it also includes a new section that is on the deferral programs that are being recommended by the Issues Committee. This is what we call in the rule individualized deferral programs that would allow the Grievance Committee working with the Office of Counsel to have people deferred from grievances based on an individualized deferral program. So those, although that's unrelated, I just felt like let's just put them all in one rule, so they're all in front of you all at the same time. These are all for publication for comment. And so we actually will have some opportunity to work out in practice some of the procedural stuff. So we'll have this quarter to take that into consideration, and adjustments can be made when the rules come back before the executive committee in October. So I would suggest we stop at that point and there be a motion for publication or to recommend publication to the council. If folks are ready for that, and again, Carmen can answer subsequent questions.
Chair will entertain a motion to that effect. So moved. Second. Any questions?
I do want to thank Catherine Jean and Carmen for getting this done in record time.
Right. All in favor? Opposed? That passes. Shall now move on to section 4.2 of the agenda.
So the legislation instructed the state bar to adopt temporary rules, and they use that language, temporary rules, to implement the expungement process by October 31, 2024. Well, the next full council meeting is actually November 1st, 2024. So we needed to do something to fill in the gap. They specifically talked about a temporary rule. So what we're asking is that rule .0136, which is the new rule that you just approved to be recommended to the council for publication. That rule be adopted as a temporary rule effective October 31, 2024. That will mean there'll be a whole quarter when it is a temporary rule, and we'll be actually doing its functions pursuant to that rule, because it won't be until the January meeting that you'll have an opportunity to formally adopt the rule, and then of course we have to send it to the court for approval and all of that. So to meet the requirements of the legislation, we need to have a temporary rule in place October 31st. And it just makes sense for it to be the rule that we're also going to adopt as our formal rule to handle its functions. So the recommendation there is to recommend to the council adopting the temporary rule, which is rule .0136, to be effective October 31, 2024.
The chair will entertain a motion in that regard. So moved by second by Clark. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Opposed? Passes. Thank you.
And then the third thing that we need to do, again, to implement the legislation, is to authorize the use of temporary procedures. And this is one where the legislation in one arena said adopt temporary rules, but in this other arena didn't say anything. So Carmen and Catherine and I kind of all scratched our heads and said, well, what we need to do is have the council adopt temporary procedures in order that we can implement the changes to the grievance process, the standing requirements, and designation of vexatious complainants. All of those provisions of the legislation are supposed to be effective August 1. So we need to have temporary procedures for us to be able to do those things. And once again, we're utilizing the rules that we're publishing for comment. We didn't want to do two different things. This will be a great opportunity for us to test them out, you know, to give them a trial run before we get to the November 1st meeting, when at that time you could consider changes to the actual rules if we find that we need to change something to make it work better, etc. But in the interim, starting August 1, we're going to start being subject to these requirements. So we need some procedures to enable us to do that. So the recommendation is to ask the council to authorize the utilization of the procedures in the rules, and I can read those sections if you need me to do that. That would be effective August 1, 2024. They are set out in the agenda for the executive.
That is the recommendation. The chair will entertain a motion to that effect. By Eddie and by Kevin. Right. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Passes. Thank you. All right, we shall now move to section 5 of the agenda, and as I believe these are proposed rules for publication in accordance with our normal procedures.
Yes, sir. Nothing strange here.
And again, all of these are in the materials. First is the proposed rule amendments governing specialization programs for immigration law specialty and continued certification as a specialist. Materials are in your package. So there, I need a motion to recommend these for publication. Chair will entertain that motion.
So
Clark, and can I get a second by Alec?
Yeah, people.
Probably move to second. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. The next is another proposed amendment for adoption and transition to the Supreme Court. This relates to rules governing the administrative committee process for members to transfer directly from administrative suspension status to inactive status, and also to update the requirements to transfer from active status to inactive status materials in your, packet. The chair will entertain a motion, to recommend adoption and transmission to the Supreme Court. So moved by Ali, second by Scott. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Passes. Thank you. Also, proposal for amendments to the disciplinary rule on trust account compliance program and random auditor program. The materials are in your packet. This will facilitate the deferral of grievances to the tax program and the referral of lawyers failed a random audit to the tax program. So that is a, we need a motion to recommend adoption and transmission of that to the Supreme Court as well. The chair will entertain that motion. So moved.
Second.
Matt Smith and Walter Brown. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Opposed? Passes. Thank you. All right, we will now move to the various reports. Beginning with the litigation report, Ms. Bannon, litigation report.
Oh, litigation report is in your materials, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Any question or comment? Thank you, Carmen. Legislative liaison report by Peter Bolat. Peter?
I'm not gonna belabor the bill that we just discussed and passed rules about, but that really was the major, item that happened during this legislative session. The legislators are now, they're adjourned for the summer, be back in January. We did work really hard to get this bill in, the best condition that it can be before it was passed. The original language had some really troubling language that it was going to be hard to make work. Carmen and Brian and me and we worked with some of the defense counsel that really crafted and convinced the legislature to take our recommendations, and they did word for word. So the outcome is as good as it can be, and we're able to make this work. There were other items that we were tracking this session. A few of them never materialized. There was one bill that clarifies when our rules become effective. It changes some language in the statute related to the codifier of rules at the Office of Administrative Hearings. And clarifies that. I think there was always this question on whether they were effective when the rules were published in the code or when the Supreme Court approved them. And now there's statutory language saying that it is when we submit the rules to OAH, they become effective the beginning of the month after we submit them to the codifier of the rules. We're tracking some other bills related to some pro hoc vice and other various things that never ended up not materializing this session. And so there'll be things that come up. I think in January there'll be a push for certain things again, and we'll keep everyone abreast of that.
Thank you, Peter. Now we'll hear from the Issues Committee, and that goes with Marcy.
I don't believe there's any other report. We had one action item that's already been taken care of. Publication, unless anybody has any questions. You can repeat that.
Any questions for Marcy? Thank you, Marcy. Report of the access to justice. We'll hear from Catherine Fry.
Yes, I'll be brief. We listened to and participated in a lively panel discussion. It's great to shed some light on various things that are happening in the eastern part of the state regarding to creative issues or creative solutions to access to justice issues. That is entirely of the majority of what we spend our time doing.
Thank you, Catherine. Any questions for Catherine? Authorized Practice Committee, Bobby, floor is yours.
Thank you, the authorized practice committee met yesterday afternoon. Good work, assistance. As our chief may have we consider 11 files, took action on, 10 of those. Received a prepaid legal report, we also received a litigation report regarding Iris annual case that's filed in Wayne County and currently, it's been, Webster District, North Carolina. That's the report from yesterday, no action items.
Thank you, Bob. Moving right along, tonight here from the Communications Committee.
So,
Peter,
go
So
ahead.
Anna could not, make it, Anna had to go home for.
are you giving the report?
Yeah, I'll give the report. Very briefly, we talked about our communication efforts, particularly with the help of Ashley, our new agency attorney. She gives a great overview of Keller and his project, and Phil's efforts to really bolster our social media. And I think Phil's message to the communications committee as well as to all counselors, engage with the State Bar social media. There's a lot of content out there. Share it. Get your other firm members to your other peers to start following the State Bar's accounts, because the more followers we have, the more interaction we have, the more prominent our visibility becomes, and our presence on social media. So that will be our report.
Have any questions of Brian? Thank you, Brian. Next, we will hear from the Ethics Committee, and Judge, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Here, we considered 8 items that, we had some over discussion as always. We have some pretty good work that's happening in subcommittees. We have some opinions that will be published by the Ethics Committee this quarter. Also, we include the materials for tomorrow. Proposal 2024 NBO1, the use of artificial intelligence in law practice, as well as proposal 2024 NBO2, the whole internal discovery. We also have one action item for the council, that's adoption of proposed 2023 NBO3, installation of third-party self-service kiosks in lawyers' offices and inclusion of forwarding third-party advertising efforts. That is what we have. I know.
Any questions for ethics? Thank you, Judge.
Yes, sir.
And now we will turn to the Distinguished Service Awards Committee. Mr. Savage, the floor is yours.
Thank you. In the interest of efficiency, let's just push through to my motion to go into closed session pursuant to the General Statute 143-318.11A2 to prevent premature disclosure of an honorary degree scholarship prize pursuant.
Got a motion?
That's a motion.
Second. A second. Second. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Tell us when we